Hello and welcome to the Traffic Report on Traffic Paradise Radio, your weekly F1 news roundup. I'm Immy, and joining me today is Uno.
Hello.
Hi Uno, let's get into the news. Our first story this week. Rumours continue to swirl over Franco Colapinto's future, and it is seeming more and more likely that he will be on the grid next year. According to his management, Williams are negotiating with both Red Bull and Alpine. It is debated whether Franco would be going to Red Bull directly or to their sister team VCARB, but the management of Red Bull seems to be an organised mess, so we can only speculate. You may be confused by the mention of Alpine, because they have finalised their lineup for 2025, consisting of Pierre Gasly and rookie Jack Doohan, but it seems Jack's future at the team is already at stake, although he is yet to do a racing lap in an F1 car. I know we both want to see Franco on the grid next year. Where would it be for you, Uno?
For me, Franco makes sense going to VCARB. I can see that, provided Red Bull buy him out of his Williams contract completely. Not on a loan system, but rather they keep him as their driver. It does sort of call into question the efficacy of their young driver program, because what's the point of it if you're just going to be taking drivers from other teams? And it's not the first time they've done it. They did it with Sergio Perez, and now they're doing it with, considering potentially doing it with Franco Colapinto. I do think he'd be a good fit there, and I understand why they would want to do it. I find the Alpine situation to be very problematic because Doohan hasn't even raced yet, and you're already considering dropping him. It's just going to kill his confidence. And we've seen what a lack of confidence in a driver from their team can do, because we've got Logan Sargent as a very clear example of that. So I do question Alpine, and really I think it's Flavio Briatore who's making that call. I do question what they really see in doing that.
So on the Alpine stuff, the general sort of rumour is that it would be for 2026, but then there are whispers for 2025. I don't know what is going on there, but at the end of the day, it sort of comes down to how new and shiny someone is. Franco is the hot property right now because he's come here, had this opportunity, and he's executed it. So although you've got this person who's been in your driver development program, who's been your reserve driver, who's dedicated hours and hours and hours in the sim for you, he's not the one who's out there pulling off these amazing point scoring performances, because you don't know what Jack can do in an F1 car yet. I think it's a weird move to even consider. I'd say at least because what the rumor is that Jack only has a 5 race contract, which I think is a bizarre contract, honestly.
Yeah, it's sort of, if you really felt that way about Jack Doohan and you weren't sure, Esteban Ocon is leaving your team. Like, put Doohan in for the last 5 races. I don't think Ocon, well, I mean, maybe he would have cared if, like, Doohan had gotten a podium in Brazil instead of him. But other than that, I can see because that's essentially what Red Bull and Visa Cash App RB did with Daniel Ricciardo and Liam Lawson. They said, right, we need to see if Liam's up to scratch for next year. So we're giving him 6 races to prove himself, and like sort of as a probationary period to see whether or not he'll get the contract for 2025. At this point, it looks like he'll probably get that contract because now they've seen him in action. He hasn't raced for a year, so they needed to see he was still in the game, so to speak. With Doohan, Alpine could have done the same thing and saved themselves this weird situation now where they're courting another driver before the driver they've signed has even done a single lap. It's just weird. And if you're considering him for 2026, then why are you speaking about it now? Why is there rumors swirling? You don't know. Maybe Doohan's the next freaking Michael Schumacher. You don't know what he can do in that car. You don't know what he's capable of.
Do you want to see Franco on the grid next year? If so, where? Let us know in the comments. Brazil was a rocky weekend for a lot of teams, McLaren included. Although they held a 1-2 finish during the sprint, they lost out to a temperamental, wet 69 laps around Interlagos. Lando Norris dropped from pole to sixth, having multiple off-track excursions in the process. McLaren team principal Andrea Stella has blamed brake issues, specifically lockups under certain conditions, as the reason for the poor outing. He highlighted the unpredictability of the lockups, which were not something that could be adjusted for lap by lap. Stella said it was a technical opportunity for the team, so it could be something they have been looking into over the 2-week break. How much did the brakes affect Norris's chances?
I think the red flag was the main contributor to Norris's chances in that race just drastically reducing and him essentially losing the title fight. Because without that red flag, Norris would have definitely finished on the podium, if not won it. So I don't know if the brakes played as much of a factor.
I think the brakes maybe just made his bad day worse. Going off on the restart and losing positions.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that had something to do with the brakes. Were the brakes warm enough? Were the tires warm enough? You can sort of heat the tires under braking sometimes. There's different. I don't know how it works with wets 100% or inters, I should say, but that could have contributed. But at that stage, he had already lost the race.
Oh, well, yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, these specific instances of these brake lockups that come to mind are Lando at the restart and then also Oscar in Q3. He lost his last lap to a big lockup. So it's definitely an issue we've seen across both cars during Brazil. But I do think that race was definitely lost for him already.
But also earlier on in the season, are they saying that this was just a Brazil thing, or are they saying it's been like a constant thing? Because I've seen he's locked up a few times, and I wonder if that's not a contributing
It's
factor.
more like under specific conditions.
Okay.
So, like, the wet aggravated it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe they're trying to. I don't know if they're trying to save face, maybe for Lando in saying that it was the brakes.
I'd think that, but then because Oscar had the same thing happen, I think it might have even been in both Q3 laps he locked up, and it was at that same corner.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, look, if it was a thing, I doubt it's going to be an issue again if it's very specific to a wet track. The next three races are like in desert conditions, aren't they?
Yeah, pretty sure.
Like Vegas is a desert. Abu Dhabi is like basically a desert. I think Qatar is also like a desert. So I don't think it's gonna be an issue for them. So whatever it was, if it is just about being in wet conditions, it should be fine from this point onwards.
Something they should probably fix before 2025, though. Next up, some quick-fire breaking news. Visa Cash App RB will be replacing key components of their car for the final 3 races. They will be using the rear suspension and gearbox from the senior Red Bull team's RB20. It is expected to give them an extra tenth a lap.
Formula E has acquired IP and copyright assets from the now defunct W Series as they look to include more female drivers in the sport. While there are no plans in place just yet, their recent all-women test day shows a commitment to diversity and equality in motorsport.
Alpine announced today that from 2026 they will be using Mercedes power units and gearboxes. The relationship will run until at least 2030.
An FIA investigation into Red Bull's front bib adjuster has found no evidence of the team using the device in an illegal manner to break parc ferme conditions.
F1 race director Niels Wittich has stepped down with immediate effect. He will be replaced in Las Vegas by Rui Marquez, the race director for the Formula 2 and Formula 3 series.
Aston Martin's technical director Dan Fallows will step down from his role but remain with the group. Executive Director Bob Bell will temporarily step into the position until a permanent replacement has been appointed.
In February 2025, all Formula 1 teams and drivers will launch their liveries at a lavish event at London's O2 Arena. Tickets will go on sale on Friday.
And finally, Kit Kat has been announced as the official chocolate bar partner of Formula 1 for the 2025 season. I'm not quite sure why F1 needed an official chocolate partner, but hey, get that bag, I guess.
Do you think they're going to make themed Kit Kats?
I really hope so. Because you get different flavors in other countries. In South Africa, I think we just get the one flavor. Occasionally they'll bring out like a special one, but
I think Japan's really good for Kit Kat flavors.
I've heard it's amazing. There's a matcha one. Now, I
Ooh.
don't actually know what matcha tastes like, but I will be trying it when I go to Japan because I think Checo, I saw one of his adverts for Kit Kat and he was talking about how cool the matcha one is. So I'll give it a try.
Yeah, I mean, in the UK, we have milk dark white. It's not very lavish.
Yeah, I think we had a caramel one at one
Ooh.
point. It was okay. No. Now I want chocolate.
Okay. After hints and the creation of an Instagram account last week, the Grand Prix Drivers Association has finally put out a statement. Its main points include differentiating general swearing from that directed at others, asking the FIA president to watch his tone with drivers, and a highlight on driver monetary fines not being appropriate. The FIA's monetary fines are inconsistent, unproportionately expensive, and no one knows where the money goes. For a non-profit organisation, these are big issues. What do you think about the statement?
So I did like the little bit of snarkiness that they had in there, especially calling out Mohammed bin Sulayem for his own language and the way he speaks about and to drivers. I thought was quite. I like that spice that they threw in there. I was, however, surprised because I thought they were going to address the safety issues from the Brazilian Grand Prix. I think that's a far bigger issue that needs to be addressed than can Max Verstappen say fuck in a press conference.
I think what might have happened is that this has been a statement that has been made over around the last month, sort of deliberating with legal and that kind of thing to make it a proper statement that hits all the points they want to. And it's just been badly timed with all the safety issues of the Brazilian Grand Prix. They have this Instagram account now to make however many open letters they want to. Maybe they'll say something about it at some point, or maybe it's been brought up internally.
I would have prioritized differently. Yeah, you can mention we're not happy with the fines, and I do think, I mean, we've spoken about it many times here on the channel. I don't think that the fines are make any sense. I don't think they're too much or too little. I just don't think they should exist. We have had instances this year, like with Yuki Tsunoda when he called Zhou Guanyu, a word which we will not repeat here. He admittedly didn't know what that word meant and the context around it and why it's a problematic word. However, he was fined significantly more than what has been suggested for Charles Leclerc, for example, and that to me seemed warranted. It was directed at another driver. It was offensive, and it was dealt with accordingly. And I think within reason. When it comes to Charles Leclerc or Max Verstappen, when they swore, it was not directed at anyone. It was not offensive. It was just expressing themselves. And they were literally saying, like, they were almost quoting themselves when they were saying it. So they were just being honest. I find it interesting that Liam Lawson got away with giving Checo the middle finger at the Mexico Grand Prix because I find that to be far more offensive than what Max or Charles said. It's not as offensive as what Yuki Tsunoda said, but I think if you're going to punish Max and Charles, you should be punishing Liam as well.
I think for the most part, they sort of differentiate what's in the car and what's out of the car. Like, drivers swear on the team radio every weekend, nobody's getting called up for it. For the most part, I'm fine with interactions on track not being punished because you are sort of in this high adrenaline environment, and to ask yourself to drive this car safely, drive this car in an entertaining way, and also moderate yourself the entire time and think, if I do this thing now, will it be nice or will it hurt the feelings of the person next to me? You don't have time to think about that.
Yeah, for me, the thing with what Liam did, it's more about where he did it and the context that he found himself in when he did it. Because you're essentially insulting like a lot of people that are watching that race when you do something like that. So that's why for me, I think it's more severe than what like Max or Leclerc did. I don't think anyone should be getting a fine for it. What I'm saying is, I find what Liam did to be far more severe than what Charles or Max did.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And therefore, if you're not punishing Liam, why are you punishing Charles and Max? That's sort of my take.
The press conference situation is just a weird hill to die on, first of all. And then also, if I just sort of steer the conversation back to the monetary fine aspect of it, because I'm happy that was a big part of the letter, the current season total for monetary fines is 305,600 euros. And no one knows where that's going.
If they took that money and they did like a bit of a raffle and they find someone who's in like Formula 4 and they say, anyone who's lacking funding for next season, we're going to put all your names in a hat and we're going to draw a name out, and that person gets this money towards their season next for 2025. I'd be happy with that. Like, I think use it for development.
That would be very constructive. I also think an aspect with monetary fines is that people don't often think about the smaller teams in this. Let's bring up Yuki especially because I think he's the least paid driver on the grid. Right. Granted, oh you say oh he gets €1 million, right? Oh that's so much money. But then he has to pay like trainers, transport, yada yada. At the end of that he doesn't have that much, and then if he's having to pay such and such and fines all the time every weekend, it's so much money that's coming out of his livelihood. I think Kevin Magnussen once said something along the lines of, "If I got a fine like that, I'd disappear."
Yeah, that was because they were talking about something like $1 million fines or something, or
Yeah.
€1 million fines. And he was like, Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton will be fine. I will literally just flee the country. And it's like, yeah, it does. There is a, they're all, most of the drivers are millionaires, I would argue, with
Yes.
the sole exception maybe of like Liam Lawson and Franco Colapinto. I don't know how rich Colapinto's parents are or Lawson's parents, but I don't think they themselves. Maybe Colapinto has with endorsement deals. Maybe he's a millionaire, okay, but I don't think someone like Lawson is, for example. So if Lawson got like a $20,000 or $30,000 fine, that would be very difficult for him to pay. I'm pretty sure because I think he makes about 300,000 a year. So you're talking like a tenth of his salary, and I'm pretty sure that those amounts we talk about, like Yuki with $1 million or Lawson with 300,000, that's before tax.
Yes, as well, yes. Before tax, before any sort of payment, personal trainer.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, look, it's a lot more money than certainly most people in my country will ever see in a lifetime. Okay. So I'm not pitying them. I'm not like, oh, poor F1 drivers, but I think a punishment needs to be fair and it needs to be equitable. So even this thing of like Max Verstappen getting community service and Charles Leclerc paying a fine, and it's all over the place. There needs to be a standard way of doing it, and yeah, I don't think it should be monetary, because if it's monetary, it affects different drivers differently.
Exactly.
If Max Verstappen is told, if you let's say there's like a set fine of $5,000 for every F word, you just know Max Verstappen's going to look at his bank account, look at the media, and go, fuck. And I'm going to have to bleep all that out now. But that's exactly what he's going to do, because he has the money to do that. Whereas someone who's just coming into the sport will not be able to do that. And they'll have to watch their words and be very careful in what they say. That to me creates the wrong environment. I think the community service route is probably better. Yeah, go be a marshal at a junior series race for a weekend. If you really want to have a punishment, that should be the punishment. Something like that. And that's only in cases where the offense is so severe that it creates, like, for example, with Yuki. To go to Yuki Tsunoda after he said what he said and say, you're going to go be a marshal at the Super Formula event for a weekend, and you're going to be running out and picking up debris and waving a flag or whatever for the whole race weekend. I think that's a fitting punishment, because yeah, if you can pay your way out of it, like, it doesn't make a difference to you.
Exactly. It teaches a lesson more at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Yuki could pay that fine. He obviously didn't disappear off the face of the earth after paying it, but did it teach the lesson as well as him having to go and spend a weekend doing it? Because then that entire weekend while he's off volunteering, he's thinking about why he got there. Whereas the money, it's paid and it's done and it's out of his mind. I mean, I don't know, maybe he reflected on it a lot. I assume he did.
I mean, I think he's doing fine. There was this video of him driving this like hypercar on the highway in Italy somewhere this weekend.
Uh,
And the guys driving next to him were like, "Oh my gosh, it's Yuki Tsunoda in this like super fancy car." So I think he's doing fine financially.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the fines just, they're not like set in proportion to what the drivers are earning. So exactly, some will feel it worse than others. So it's just not a constructive way to punish.
Absolutely.
Obviously, it definitely is harder to punish stuff that happens off track because you can't just add a time penalty or penalty points. But there needs to be
Mm,
some sort of resolution that isn't money, and we need to know where the money is going. I think is the number one. Just where does that go?
yeah. If I could just circle back to a point I made earlier, like, so I spoke about like the safety at Brazil and why I was surprised that that wasn't mentioned. If I'm going to be blatantly honest, this letter that they put out, okay, as spicy as it was and as fun as it was, it's really just the grievance of a bunch of very wealthy men being told that they can't say what they want to say. Okay. To me, that's an email you send to the FIA. The GDPA has power and they have influence and they have a platform. The thing I would have brought to the attention of the world and on that post would have been the safety issues, because you had poor Ollie Behrman pleading on his radio to stop the race because he didn't want to die. I just feel like the GDPA has this power and this influence to actually do something important, and their first big statement is about you're being mean to the rich men. And that to me just sort of it doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah,
I'll just be honest.
I mean, it's not great. My thought process there really is that maybe my naive hope is that they have to take a long time to formulate these open letters, and it's obviously, at least it's a three-person project with chairman and the directors of the GPDA. I always get the D and the P the wrong way around, so I have to think about it. Um,
Yeah, it's Grand Prix drivers. So
yeah,
yeah, so it's
GPDA, but
GD.
you want to say GTPA. um, but yeah, so
I
my
just it like it takes a long time for them to write something.
yeah, so
Like maybe they really did they. I suppose they didn't spend much time in school, did they? Because they were all busy racing and karting. But like, come on, guys! Did
it's
you
the
never have to do an
professional sector, though,
assignment?
isn't it? So my hope is that maybe they've had this and they've been working on this for at least like a month since Max's community service. Maybe there will be a letter about
That's
safety
also just such a
standards.
rich man thing. Like, oh, let's take a month to write a page. Come on, man. Come on. Come on. Just it's just so
I
frustrating.
don't know. They've got other stuff to do. Well,
I just find it very funny. Like, it's very bizarre that it took them so long to write this. I'm glad they did write it. I think it's an important thing, and I think that I think in the context of challenging Ben Sulayem and his, because yeah, as I said, like we've spoken about this before, I was very offended by what Ben Sulayem said. I thought his comments about like rappers and whatever was very very problematic, and I'm glad they've called him out on that. So I'm not like opposed to the statement in any way. I just kind of do hope that maybe this was just the first step and they're going to sort of get a bit more intense from here
I
on
agree.
out. But yeah, if this is just the first step in a series of steps that where there's going to be escalation in what they're talking about, I'm fine with that. I just hope that that is the route it's going, and that they use this platform in a way to make the sport safer and the sport fairer on everyone.
Yes, it would be very underwhelming to say the least if they created this whole Instagram account and this is the only post we ever see from it. So
Yeah.
Hopefully, it goes in a continuous sort of direction.
Come on, George, give us a PowerPoint.
Finally, a bit of light-hearted news. After the announcement of his departure from Sauber at the end of the season, Valtteri Bottas has been documented completing an entire Ironman in his own home. It is a triathlon that consists of a 3.9 kilometer swim, a 180 kilometer bicycle ride, and a 42 kilometer run. So, well done to Valtteri.
How big is this guy's swimming pool at his house?
I think he was just like doing laps back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It didn't look big.
That's like for 3.8 kilometers.
3.9.
3.9. I mean, does he have like an Olympic sized pool?
I don't. It looked like a pretty. What would you say, like customer sized pool? It didn't look
Like
big.
a residential
Yeah,
suburban
residential.
pool?
That's what it looked like.
I know
He
I
was
can't
doing
in
tiny
my
little
pool
laps.
at home. I can't. I could not do laps of swimming because I go 1, 2. I'm there at the other end, and then
I think
it would be
it's a
like
little bit bigger than that. Maybe.
hopefully, but
Maybe it's like
yeah,
4 strokes.
it's just that's a lot of unnecessary turning around, in my opinion. But you know what? Well done to him. He's clearly got a lot of energy. The Sauber doesn't really go all that fast, so maybe he just feels
Yeah.
happier going fast in his swimming pool.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for joining us. That's all the news we have for you this week. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe as we will have news for you every Wednesday. Thank you for watching and have a good rest of your day or night. Bye!
Bye bye. Okay, so I don't know if in other countries you get it, but in South Africa we have a Nestle chocolate called Bar One.
Yeah, we don't have that.
Yeah, to me that just seems like a far better brand to integrate with. It's got the one in it, Bar One,
Um,
F1. It would have made a lot more sense.